Hello friends, Dr. Patterson again. In this video, I'm going to go over how to hook up the Arduino for the first time. You're either going to be looking at one of these Metro boards, which is kind of like an Arduino clone, or one of the Arduino boards itself. Going to having a hard time nailing down enough talk for one or the other at the moment. So the hookup procedure is effectively the same. The only difference you're going to see is the type of cable that you plug into it. So with the Metro board, you're going to be looking at a micro cable, a micro USB, and then on the standard Arduino board, you're looking at a USB-B cable. So that's for what we're doing in class, that's really the only main difference that we'll come across is the cable that you need to hook it up to. So I'm gonna work with this one for now. So what we can do is, like I said, we've already installed MATLAB, we've installed the Arduino IDE, which means it should be able to hook up and power on for the first time. Actually, I've already got the other USB cord plugged in, so I'm going to do the Metro. And all we need to do is just plug in the cable, and you'll hear it connect, as you might have heard my computer. And then over in MATLAB, let me first go over the MATLAB documentation, which we can essentially just look for how we connect to the Arduino. And this first one under functions, it lists how to connect to the Arduino hardware. So we can click on that. And this first command, sometimes with the non-standard or the non branded Arduino boards, you have to tell it initially which COM port and which type of board it is, but then it'll work afterwards. It's just something good to keep in mind. Like if you can't get it to connect, sometimes it's almost like you need to help it remember like which COM port and which type of board it is. So if we just typed for this one, A equals Arduino, let's see if it connects. Maybe. It's been hit or miss on this board for me. It did connect this time. So we can see that it's connected to COM3, but you might ask, well, what if you need to specify the COM port? How would I know that ahead of time? Well, let me clear it all here. There's one command that we can use to easily determine which COM port we need to connect on. So if I type in serial list, all one word, it lists the available serial communication ports that are currently available on the computer. And if I just unplug this board and then run that same command, I've now only got 2 instead of the 3 that I had originally. So it's that one that disappeared when I unplugged the board. So if I plug that back in, I'd be able to specify A equals Arduino and pass it the COM port. So we would say COM3. And then the type of board is Uno, which I think we can do all caps. Let's see what they have for an example. Oh, yep. Capital U, lowercase n, lowercase o. So we type in that, hit enter. We should see the same connection, which we do to COM3. And then the way that we can test this to make sure that it shows us that it passed back an Arduino object, which is an instance or like a live version of something called a class that's being used to kind of hide all the specifics of how it's talking to the board and passing information back and forth. And so what we can do is tell it for that object, this instance of this class, we can say A and then use a period. And you're like now able to ask it to perform functions, or in this case, because it's part of a class, method that's available to this particular class or object. So if we type in write digital pin and pass it which pin we want, on all of the Arduino boards, there's an LED up here that's hooked up to pin 13. So if we pass it a pin D13, and then we have to tell it whether we want it on or off. On is a state of 1, or it's essentially true or false. 1 is true, 0 is false. So we want it, it's currently off. It's this one over on the side. It's currently off, so we want it to turn on. So we pass it a 1 value and hit enter, and we see that red light turn on. And then if we wanted to turn it off, we issue the same command, but instead of a 1, we pass it a 0, and it turns that LED off. So this is just a simple way that we can test the board. If we wanted to do something fancier, we could say, let's up here, write a program that just does a for loop. I equals 1 to 10, and we'll say, we'll start with an LED state is equal to 1. And then inside the loop, we'll say a.write digital pin, and we can pass that D13. Can't type today. And then we can pass it that variable LED state. And then on the next line, I want it to switch. And so we can say LED state is equal to, in this case, the not symbol or the opposite logic is the tilde, and then we can say LED state. And so we set it to the opposite of itself. So every time it should go back and forth between 0 and 1, and then we can end the loop. Just so that it doesn't happen too quickly for us to see, we'll say pause half a second in there. And then we can run this. So we should see the LED turn on and off. Turn on, which should be a total of 5 times. But going through on, off, back and forth until it goes through the loop 10 times and then exits at the end. If you ever get to a point where it just flat out refuses to connect to your board, and you don't, like, no matter what arguments you're specifying, it says there's already a connection, and even if it looks like this, where you have nothing in your workspace, right? Let's say we have nothing in our workspace over here, but it's still it's not able to connect to the board. There's a command that will be good to remember. It's instr reset. And this is part of the instrument control toolbox. Essentially, it like resets all the ports that were being used. And so if we run this, then that essentially like clears all the previous like potentially still active connections, gets rid of them, and then you should be able to connect back to the board again. So if we go back to that A equals Arduino, it'll connect again. It's hard to replicate exactly when that connection issue is going to happen. A lot of times it happens if you try to like pause the code while it's running, or if you hit the debug button or anything like that, it behaves strangely. So just make sure you remember instr reset will help like clear everything out. So serial list to get the COM ports, A equals Arduino to connect to the board, instr reset, so that worst case scenario, you can torch everything, scorched earth kind of approach, and clear everything out and then connect again. That's all I wanted to show in this video. Just make sure your board works. There's no reason it shouldn't, but if you're buying it from somebody else instead of from the bookstore, you may or may not be getting it from someone that did not treat it very well. So see you in the next video.